Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everybody. He is a beacon of information, knowledge, insight for not only parents, but those that are looking to get into the field that he spent many years in, and that is as a school psychologist. I've learned so much. We've talked to some of the students that he's worked with over the years, and he spent many years at the Reed Union School District in California, and he's back with us. Good Advice Helps with Dr. Allan Gold. Welcome, Allan. How are you doing today?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
Very well, and apparently you've struck some chords because since the last time we got together, we got a bunch of emails from students, it looks like, that are looking to enter the field. By the way, you can always reach us, instantfeedbacksteve@gmail.com. And can we go into some of these emails right now?
Sure.
You know, it's interesting. Last time we talked about parental challenges. So we're going to flip it around now and look at a question from Justin in Ocala, Florida, who says, thank you for the podcast last week. So I guess this was the week before. He says, what do you find most rewarding and most challenging about being a school psychologist?
Lots of things, actually. What's most rewarding is building the relationships with not only students, but with parents and with faculty and administrators. Obviously, the most rewarding thing is when I can help somebody, when I can improve their mental health. It's an extremely gratifying experience. So, just forming those relationships and figuring out how to do that. How can I be supportive of kids? How can I be supportive of parents? How can I be supportive of teachers? So all of that is incredibly rewarding. I also found rewarding the variety of activities that I was able to do. Nothing was ever boring in this job, because most school psychologists have the responsibility of assessing kids for learning disabilities or emotional problems or attention deficit disorder or autism, and even more rare situations. So each child is a different puzzle to be solved, and the process of gathering data and through testing, through observation, through discussions, and then putting all of that information together, it's really solving a problem. Not all of them are easy to do. Some are quite complicated, but each child is an individual. And just the satisfaction and the reward of figuring out how a child is thinking and feeling, that's extremely rewarding. It's also rewarding solving the puzzle of how to work with parents so they can adequately support their kids, perhaps change their behaviors in regards to how they treat their kids, both academically and emotionally. How do you build the relationship so that they trust you and what you have to recommend will be listened to? So that's all rewarding. And then working with teachers. Teachers these days are not like teachers when I was growing up. All they had to do was teach. And there was a very strict, structured classroom. Nowadays, classrooms are much more variable. They may or may not be as structured. Teachers may be more or less strict, but teachers' roles now are not just educating academics, but also acting as parents for 6 or 7 hours a day, acting as counselors, emotional support. So teachers have an incredibly challenging job, and it was tremendously rewarding to me when teachers came to me for support for them or advice or consultation so that they could better handle their most challenging kids. And it may not have been behaviorally challenging. Kids can be academically challenging. There are those kids that have learning disabilities or lower intelligence, and how does a teacher address them? And then there are kids who are super intelligent, and the work is too easy for them. So they need support in how to adjust the curriculum so that it can benefit, that all kids can learn at the pace at which they need to learn. So those are certainly, I hope that explains how rewarding a job it is.
It really does. And you open our eyes to a lot. Like, I didn't even consider, but it's obvious there that you're evaluating a child when you're working with them. I just go with the word psychologist and how to help them navigate through challenges, whether they're school challenges, learning challenges, challenges at home. But you have to observe and kind of get a baseline. Do they need additional services? What's going on there? So even that one initial meeting when you're with them, you got a lot going on all at the one time.
There is a lot going on, and the challenge. I think was it Justin who asked the question?
Yes.
Yes. Asked, what are the challenges? I think there are a number of challenges too. Some are personal, like managing. You have to be organized. You have to be flexible. Because,
well, you know what? I don't mean to cut you off, but it's like you're reading his mind, because he had another question, and it says, what skills or personal qualities do you think are essential for someone to succeed in this role?
Okay, that's an excellent question. I think, like I was saying, you have to be organized because you have a lot of work. You have to be flexible because the schedule that you might set up could be have problems because your students some student may be absent. There may be a fire drill. There may be a field trip or something like that. So you have to change that. A kid may be sick. You may be sick. You have to be really flexible there. But you do have to be organized because for each child there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and however, whether you can keep it all in your head, I suggest writing down whatever you need to do for a particular child so that you make sure you don't forget anything, whom you have to contact, whom you have to discuss, what test you have to administer. And when you're beginning, it's good, and you do counseling, it's good to write down some of the main points that you discuss. I think personal traits that are important are, I think one thing is very important, which is to be kind to yourself. Because as a psychologist, you don't have control over your workload. So you have to be okay with not totally pushing yourself all the time, finding some rest or relaxation time for yourself.
Let's go right there. It's got to take a lot out of you. Even if I'm a big believer in energy. Everything is energy, I believe. We're energy. We vibrate different frequencies. So then when you interact with others, and it can get deep. You might be working with a child who's got a lot of challenges. It can take your energy. So I can't imagine. Now you're in your office, Allan, day after day, student after student coming in. It's got to take from you. And I got to believe you're also an empath. and that's why you've been so successful so many years. You're picking up on what they got going on.
Right. Which is all very true. But, when I think back on it, over time, you learn how to deal with that. Empathy is exceedingly important. You cannot be in this profession unless you have empathy, but you also have to build a little bit of armor. You can't fall apart with every student who is going through a difficult challenge. I mean, that may sound sort of mean, but it's not. In order to, you have to have that intellectual side of yourself that is balancing the emotional side. So in order to, solve the problems and think, how am I going to show empathy and feel empathy, but not fall apart? That's why I recommend for every single school psychologist, if not every person in the world, to have therapy. And particularly in the beginning of a career, you're not going to know everything. And to be hard on yourself when you make a mistake that's cruel. It takes time. Well, I used to tell my interns, it took me 25 years to really know what I was doing, which isn't exactly true, but it is a growing process, so that things that are brand new in the first year or two or three or four or five of your career become pretty familiar, and you do things, automatically. You learn how to talk to kids at different ages. Again, that's a flexibility. You talk to a kindergartner a lot different than you talk to a fifth grader, and a lot different than you talk to an eighth grader or
Sure.
a high school kid. I think having a good sense of humor is another personal trait. If you can get kids to laugh, if you have that kind of kid quality in yourself, I think that's something that appealed to kids, even though I'm an older guy.
Well, I want to say something here at that point. You told me your age before we got on here. You don't even look even close to it. I got to believe being around kids for decades kept you young. I really feel that way. And I just thought of that just now. It's like, what's the secret? I think that might have been the secret.
It does, because in order to relate to them, you can't just be this wise old sage. You have to find out what they laugh at, and that brings them in.
Yep.
So personal characteristics are extremely important. You have to be smart. You have to be, self-reflective. You have to understand emotions, but you have to be kind to yourself and recognize that as a human being and in a profession, even if you've been in the profession for years and years and years, you may make a little error. You may say something that you probably should have thought about before you said it. And certainly be willing to apologize if you've made a mistake and to learn from the mistakes. Another thing that is very important that I learned over time is to give compliments. It makes a huge difference, whether it's to kids or administrators or teachers or parents. I used to think that compliments were sort of a win-lose kind of thing. If I give a compliment, then I'm not going to get one. It's the exact opposite. I found the more compliments I gave, the more I got. And it wasn't just to get compliments, but, people feel, and particularly kids need compliments because their lives at home and at school are full of criticisms. They'll, when you have to correct somebody because they've made a mistake, and that happens to kids all the time. It's part of learning. Even
at home, I got to believe so many parents.
Not even at home, especially at home. Parents are always criticizing their kids, if they do something wrong or make a mistake.
But focusing on the negative thinking as a parent, I'm criticizing them because I'm keeping them in their lane and that's my job. But then you forget to praise them, right?
Right, exactly. So praising and compliments are absolutely necessary, and to have that kind of internal understanding and to be able to don't feel like, oh well, I probably shouldn't say that, but give a little compliment and adults need it very much too. Whether it's parents. I mean, I used to compliment parents on their raising their kids, for little things, and they really loved that.
Hmm.
So there are many personal characteristics that I think are necessary in this job, and but I think when I said therapy is really important because thinking about I mean, I've been in therapy for most of my adult life, and when I was working, it was I would spend half of the issues we talked about on personal issues, and the other half, I mean, sometimes it was a third and two-thirds, sometimes it was all personal, but sometimes it might be mostly here's the situation at work, and I'm not sure how to handle it,
Hmm.
and to become open to suggestions. And at least I always found that in this school psychology job, one of the other advantages was being a team player, as opposed to having a private practice. People had asked me, Allan, why don't you open a private practice? You could make lots more money or something like that. And I said, well, I love being a team player. People look to me for advice, but I wasn't the only one who had to solve the problem. I worked with teachers, I worked
Sure.
with parents, worked with administrators, and that's very rewarding, to be in a consultant role or a team player role. And I had other school psychology classmates of mine who weren't good at that sort of teamwork and didn't end up, working in school. So that's another characteristic, personal trait that you are social, and that you know how to get along with a whole variety of other people. And that really helps um, enable the job. Um,
Do you recall back when you first started, and this term has been big for the last year or so, imposter syndrome, where you're in a role and you question yourself. Again, I'm talking in the very beginning, where like, do I know what I'm doing here? You've been trained, you've been certified, and all of that. Did it feel that way? Yeah. Okay. And you did share that, we joke with students, it takes me 25 years, to even get to this point. You've been practicing longer. But did you feel that in the very, very, very beginning?
well, I'll tell you when I did feel it. When I was 29
Mm.
and I was finishing my third year of graduate school, I had to have my oral exams for my PhD. And right before then, I felt very anxious because I didn't know what they were going to ask me.
Mm.
And it was like five professors and me. And I felt quite literally, I said, they're going to really find out how stupid I am and, and how I've sort of faked my way through, you know, 20 something years of school. So that was, I think, the imposter syndrome,
Sure.
that they were going to figure it out. As far as during work time, I don't think I ever felt that. I hadn't really thought about it, Steve, but
Mm.
I don't. I guess maybe in particular instances, early on, I might have felt like
Maybe question yourself.
question myself. Yeah,
Yeah.
do I really know what I'm doing? But I always felt that each student was an opportunity to grow And somewhere along the line, I guess I realized that it's okay to make mistakes. Sometimes I would be harder on myself than others. Like if I had a student that wouldn't talk, those are answering Justin's question too.
Mm.
I think one of the most challenging types of students is, well, two. One that's not motivated to do anything, whether it's either outside of school or academics. Excuse me. And the ones that just don't talk, who you can't build that relationship with. And then you might say, again, along with the imposter syndrome, what am I doing wrong? Why won't this kid talk to me? But fortunately, there weren't very many in my almost 50 years career that wouldn't talk. And over the last years, kids wanted to come and talk to me, so that was good.
That's got to be the best feeling in the world, where, let's say you establish that relationship, which is, again, part of the first meeting. You have to establish the relationship, assess the child, where are they at, do they need extra services, deal with their situation and or problem. But when that relationship is established, and then they come to see you, let's say 3 weeks later, Mr. Gold, I'm having a problem. Can I come in? And that, like, it's got to warm your heart. It
does. It feels so wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that I have former students who still like to be with me and talk.
Oh my gosh. Well, we talked with one a couple of weeks ago who is now in her low 20s. And if I remember correctly, kindergarten when you first started.
I met her in kindergarten. Yeah.
Amazing.
So,
that speaks volumes, by the way. It really, really does. I have another email, this from Gail in Brooktown, Illinois. She says, I am considering a career as a school psychologist and would be grateful for any advice you might share. In particular, I'm eager to learn more about the career path in this field. And she says, could you describe the typical educational and licensing journey from a bachelor's degree through specialist or doctoral level training to practice in this field?
Yes. So there's the option of getting a master's degree or a PhD.
Mm-hmm.
The early training for both, or the first few years of training for both are the same. If you just want to learn the skills that you would need for working in a school and getting a master's degree, you'll be learning assessing kids. You're learning some counseling. You learn special education laws, child development. That's absolutely necessary. Emotional issues, psychopathology, things like that. So it's usually a 2-year program for a master's degree. And then there's an internship for a year. For the PhD, you have to learn statistics. You have to learn about research, how to write papers, and then you write a thesis. But you also have an internship too. Once you've had that internship, then you can apply for, at least in California, I think it's true in all states, for your credential to start the work.
If you looked back at your education for this field, oh my gosh, I just looked at the time. We're almost done.
Yeah.
Like, how did that even happen? I had another screen in front of the clock, and I'm like, what? It almost doesn't look real. If you look back at your education, is there anything you would have adjusted, tweaked, changed?
I think I would have had a little more education and counseling. I think they do that now at the program that I was in at University of California, Berkeley. I felt like that's something I learned from just practice, a lot, and reading, obviously, doing groups and counseling. I think I would nowadays I would have a little more on the physiological development of the brain and how pharmaceuticals, drugs can help, like with attention deficit disorder and other emotional disorders. So we didn't have that education, but this was back in the 70s. So,
Sure.
Those were some areas. I loved our program really focused a lot on consultation. So that really helped me be able to work with parents and teachers, which is absolutely necessary. But there's always new information in a science, and but I think having a little more training and counseling, that would have helped, and dealing with kids' emotional problems rather than just their academic problems.
Gotcha. And even on the pharmaceutical side of things, that's not technically your job, but then again, good to have that understanding. But I'm sure, without even a doubt, along the way, you had a handle on that. I'm detecting that you might want to have gone a little bit deeper into it, but making those recommendations of possible medication.
Yeah, and that I couldn't do because it has to be a medical doctor.
Sure.
Doing that, but just understanding what medications can help with emotional problems and ADHD and that kind of thing.
Learning a lot here. Thank you for all the insight for not only the students or possible students that checked in today, but everybody else, and even for parents. It's even what we talked about today is insight for a parent, knowing that who they're speaking to in the school, where they're at, what they're doing, what's going on. It's fantastic. By the way, I'm hearing something about a documentary in the works. So I want to say congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I hear things in the hallway. Super cool. By the way, if you ever want to reach out, instantfeedbacksteve@gmail.com. If you have any insight as a student, even a parent for Allan, we're here for you. Thank you so much for being here again today. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you so much. My pleasure.
You.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
This is you over 30 years ago.
Are we there yet? Are we there yet?
And this is your mom when you drive her back from therapy.
Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?
Roles change without us noticing, and in your new role, we help you help. AARP gives you the information to help care for your mom so that you can have patience with her, just like she did with you. Visit aarp.org/caregiving or call 1-877-333-5885 to get practical health and wellness tips to provide even better care for your loved one.
Are we there yet?
Remember, visit aarp.org/caregiving. AARP, we help you help. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.